And finally, the top page.
My nose to be able to read. But any names you recognize? Anybody you'd like to congratulate? A word of encouragement?
I don't recognize any names. Let's hope I don't get in trouble. I may get some calls after. But for now, I don't recognize any names. But I would like to tell them all congratulations. This is a beautiful picture, beautiful smiling faces. I mean, we're glad that they did so well. Despite everything else happening in the nation, it's definitely happy news to see children doing so well in their exams. So a big congratulations to them.
All right, I most definitely kept an eye out for my niece, Judy Hana Mulinge. She got 413. So she is, where did I see her? So I was looking for, she is at the very end of page 7. Do you see it? Mulinge, Judy Hana, and then
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Oh. And then, let me see. There's one of our driver's daughter, also, I believe, got 406. Her name is Valentine Mora. I haven't been able to spot her on the list yet, but congratulations to all these guys, you know, momentous occasion. Our managing editor had a daughter sitting this exam, Subira. She scored, was it 400? One of our lifestyle editors had a son. Let me just confirm the name. I think it was Jibril who got 405. Let me see. Ubala sent me all these details yesterday. But good morning, Rosaline. Rosaline is our forever bestie. Jabali Adara Riara Springs, 405, and I did say Subira Situni, 400 marks. Good morning, Jim India.
Good morning.
Good to see you. I can't believe I have a full panel this early in the morning. This is good.
Yeah.
The rain was not a deterrent.
No, not at all. Big up to the guy at the far end.
Shots fired in my okay. But ask on anybody you recognize on this list, anybody you'd like to congratulate?
Well, I don't have anyone in particular to congratulate on this list here, but my congratulations go to all those young people who were given a chance, who didn't have a chance at doing their KCPE on a fair ground. You know, those who didn't have money to go to school, their parents had to struggle, others were taken in by sponsors. I actually know so many of them being taken care of by several people who didn't know they could get a chance to do their KCPE and pass. So I have gotten information that they did very well, and I want to send my congratulations to them. But also to all these young people, it's important that they understand that this is a stage that really informs how they're going to move going forward. As to whether you got 500 marks or 400 marks or 100 marks, it matters, yes. Competition is important, and we must learn to reward merit. But more important is they need to understand that this just forms a basis of how they're moving forward, and there's still a lot to do in the future. Yeah.
It's how you dust yourself off and keep moving forward. Jim?
My big congratulations to Nuru Okanga. Comrade did as well. We are very proud of this comrade. He did
although Frida Mwaka interviewed him last evening, and I just read I haven't watched the video, but there's a video on our NTV Kenya by their YouTube channel, but it's titled that he could not prove that he's at the exam. I don't know. Watch the interview for more information.
But other than that,
because you know Kenya has become a very funny place where we may be shocked Okanga was just doing this to get some attention from the entire country, which he has done successfully.
I received certain scores that
I know that as well.
So if he sat, congratulations. If he did not, congratulations also for getting us to talk about you. But the other one is also to big congratulations to the Ministry of Education for phasing out KCPE as an exam. I think no child deserves their entire future to be determined at age 12, 13 or 14 and be sealed forever. That for me is the biggest winner, that we are finally facing our KCPE, and hopefully we face out a couple of these markers that often feel like your future and fate is sealed and done after that exam. If you scored, look at your papers. Everyone here has scored 400 marks. What happened to those bright fellas who thought they would score 100 and they ended up scoring 200? That's a child who's done extremely well. Or one who people thought they would only score 200 and he scored 250. That's a child who's really bright and has done extremely well. So I think the markers of life, unfortunately, has been that we constantly seal people's face depending on which school we take you to because of the marks you scored. If you go to a good school, then that means you have a brighter future. If you go to a not so great school in our terms, because we've also now graded our schools. So I think for me, the Ministry of Education, maybe we're starting to see certain dividends of the reforms that Matiang'i was talking about during his time. Yeah.
All right. Remember the investigations into claims of cheating with the last exam and all of that. Okay, let's take a look at how the other dailies covered it, right? And then I will ask you guys to share, if you're willing, and your experiences with the national exams. Yesterday I was telling people that I hid under the bed. You watch? I'm saying, do I even remember? I hid under the bed because there were such high expectations, and I was not entirely certain I had performed as well as expected. The pressure was real, so yeah. Ilikuwa chini ya kitanda. Okay, let's see. Taifa Leo. There we go. Watoto wa there we go. Watoto wa KCPE, nyota wa KCPE mwaka wa 2023. Mtihani wa mwaka huu ulivutia watahiniwa 1,406,557 huku wengine wakipata alama 400 na zaidi. And I think of all the pictures on the dailies I've seen of Michael, this is my favorite. Michael Warutere, this is my favorite one of you. Has been taken by Evans Habil, although even the one on the front page of the Daily Nation was captured by Evans Habil, but I don't know, because it sort of like paints the picture of on the shoulders of, for a child to get here, definitely he stood on the shoulders of those who came before him. Beautiful picture, Evans there. And this guy, if you watched the story, the cook also made me quite happy how he came out with his mwiko and was like Jane, because he also played that role.
To show you he fed them well.
Yes!
He played a crucial part.
But I love these smiling faces. Finally, I've seen the tinsel. Somebody's wearing that tinsel. Do you know that mushaino, guys? Yeah. Valisha you, like when you're graduating years. I need to buy one for my niece. All right, let's see how the Standard covered it. Here we go. Warutere rules roost as stars bid bye to KCPE. Michael Warutere is the toast of town after topping last KCPE exams with an impressive 428 marks. After 39 years, the curtains have come down on the primary school examination. And there we go, those faces there, celebrating their good performance. That's the Standard. Let's take a look at the Star. Okay, what is happening here, Star? Why all the time? No, seriously, it always does this to me. I think it has a vendetta against me. I'm speaking like a politician now, eh? Yeah. Let us see. There we go. She cooperates. Academies shine as curtain falls on KCPE. Results mark end of Standard 8. You guys, I usually have to be very deliberate not to say Standard D. Just saying. I'm Kenya. Standard 8 exam first introduced 38 years ago. Boys did better in math and science. Boys and girls performed comparably in social studies and religious education. Immaculate Washeke of Gilgil Hills, Nakuru, there, her arms raised again on the shoulders of her teachers, her parents, and then we have Michael Warutere there. That I see, and other faces as well on the front page of the dailies. I think we've covered pretty much, People Daily. This is how they put it, best of final KCPE celebrations for top candidates, and more statistics there. And they also have a list, 25 overall candidates in the 2023 KCPE. Did Standard have a list as well? They had top performers. Let me see how many. This goes up to, I'm guessing it's the same as the nation, right? Top 100. Guys, Patricia, you said you can't quite remember what your exam was like? Or the experience of receiving your results?
I think for me, what happened? I think I sent my mom. I sent her to go check, just go, then figure out how you'll come and bring me the news. Because I think at that time, how did we used to get them? We used to physically go to the schools, yeah? Then I think you used to check the notice board.
No, I think, when I mean, you're younger than me, so definitely SMS was already a thing.
Oh, am I?
Because you're much younger than, trust me. I don't repeat something I said yesterday that called Julian's Amboko good morning to you. I have not forgiven you. All right. So your mom broke the news to you.
Yeah, so I think she had to go to the school. I think she checked on the list, and then she brought me the news. And I mean, it was good. It was good. And I think for me, I got into the school I needed to get to, because I first of all, I always knew what I wanted to do, even in uni from a young age. So it got me the grades to get into a good high school, and then from there, the grades get me into now law school. So I think I was relieved, I was happy. Yeah, we thank God.
All right.
I don't remember too many details other than that. It's a long time ago. Was yours more recent? Your KCPE results, guys.
What are your recollections?
Well, like I told you when you started, I know when we were doing our exams, but you were always told it's the most important exam of your life. If, as Jim rightfully said, if you'd fail that exam, your life would end. And lucky for me, I didn't. I thank God for that. And I remember when the results were out, honestly, I wasn't even, there was no anxiety, to be honest. I was just chilled, I was doing my own thing. And actually, my parents got the results before I did.
Were you on this list of 100? Because you sound like you are choppy. What do you mean you are not?
No, you see, here's the thing. Here's the thing. You see, I already had a career plan in my head, like she rightfully puts it. But for me, mine was different. I know I'd be two things, either a footballer or a lawyer. And so football didn't work out because my folks thought football won't put food on your table, sorry. So I had to focus on law, and that's how I ended up where I am today. And thanks to that, I'm here with you today.
All
so
right.
at the end of the day, I believe, obviously there are nerves. Even when you wait for the KCSE, you were more nervous, I won't lie to you. KCP was just, I was like, even if this doesn't go as per planned, we have another 4 years ahead. So that's why I would say, those who feel like they failed today, there's always tomorrow. And you can always succeed. But at the end of the day, the word failure is also relative, because what is failure to you for someone is success, courtesy of the conditions they went through. And in saying that, I bring out issues of where we have bandit attacks in Pokot. Nobody's covering to see how those kids fared and how we should make sure that they have a conducive environment moving forward. Because as we celebrate the ones we're celebrating today, I see a city boy, as it's been mentioned in the standard, a city boy has performed extremely well, which is good. We also need to make sure that those who are in areas where there are issues that need to be solved, so that they can also feel part and parcel of the country, and they can also actually have fair conditions to compete. Because it's a competition, since we are grading them, it's a competition at the end of the day, and where competition isn't fair, then it doesn't make sense. So I believe the ministry is going to look into it, and we've been told they're doing things around Pokot and Ital. So let's wait and see. And congratulations to the ones who feel that they performed. Those who didn't, there's still always tomorrow. Yeah.
Well, perhaps that's one of the reasons why Jim was like, RIP KCPE. But I'll get your thoughts shortly. But Askan Kamili, maybe Nudin Hagai was not too worried about his KCPE exam results because his parents had the financial muscle to send him to a private school, if need be. I'm just saying hypothetically.
That's the
hypothetically. But for many children who would need a sponsor to finance them through school, I mean, these exams would be literally do or die, I think you said, in terms of where they go in the future.
Yeah. First and foremost, I think I need to, I don't know about Nudin's background, but there's nothing wrong in having parents who are able to take
I didn't say the word. I didn't say the word.
I've been calling out some of my friends who I know who grew up in very stable spaces, and they end up dismissing all this effort their parents made just because the people out there have made everybody want to associate with the stories of poverty. It's very unfortunate anyway. But what I wanted to say is there are a cocktail of things we can discuss concerning CBC and KCPE. First and foremost, KCPE was an entirely good thing. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with grading students, with subjecting people to competition. The world itself is competitive all over. You want to make it to Harvard, you have to go and do the work. You want to come to the University of Nairobi, you have to do the work. I mean, we can't just put everybody in one box and tell them it's okay whether you drop to the most.
But let me ask you, what do you make of what Nudin is saying, which makes sense, right? If you look at the situation in Baringo, Pokot, conflict.
That is good.
In the northeast, the children are contending with floods as they were sitting their exams. I mean, that is
important.
An impact in your performance.
That is important to consider, and I think actually that is why CBC is coming with some remedy for such kind of instances. When a student falls sick just a day before the examinations, and then you want to judge them entirely based on how they performed in that examination becomes a bit difficult. Therefore, CBC has come up with the progressive evaluation of students through their continuous assessment tests and their final examinations. But also ask myself, how then will we know how a student would merit to join Alliance High School or Lenana School, and the other one goes to a district school in the village? You don't want to take somebody who had 450 marks to the village school and then the one who had 100 marks to Lenana School. There must be a basis of rewarding merit. There is nothing wrong with rewarding merit. That is my position. Okay. But also, CBC, I have interacted with so many young people under the CBC system, and also having gone through the the 844 system. Actually, I understand that CBC comes with a lot of the practical aspects of education, which is very important. I know for a very long time Kenyans were very jittery about the introduction of CBC for so many other reasons. Parents feel more involved. They have to leave work and go and do homework back at home, and they're tired, things like that. But I think that was losing their sight of what was really intended to be cured by the introduction of CBC. So CBC has actually delivered, and is a program that needs to be supported. There's a very popular discussion right now that somebody was saying that in a country where agriculture is not compulsory, and we make English as a language compulsory in school, you end up speaking a lot of English when you're hungry. And I was just looking at my niece who's in, I think, grade 3, doing some coding. And I remember that the first time I learned coding was in computer science in my first year in the university. So I thought to myself, actually, this is something that brings people to understand that the place of education is just not how to master things and bring them back when you're doing an examination. The most important thing is how to develop a holistic student, and that is what CBC is doing perfectly. Okay. There's also another thing that I came to realize.
All right. Can you tell us the other thing? And also, I also want to give Jim a chance to share his experience with the exams.
Yeah, my experience with KCP basically is it was a very tense period, which I think is what this CBC should try and solve. When you're joining 4th year or Form 4 to do a KCSE or Class 8, there's a lot of tension. Everybody's telling you, try and do this. Students are not very relaxed. But I also realized, from my friends who went through public schools, Kisumu Boys and Alliance and the rest, they had a lot of pressure during this time. But for us who went to private schools, it was much of an easy space. I mean, just do your thing, you pass, you're good to go. And that is how people should go to school. You go to school at 8, you leave at 3 p.m., and it was just okay. It was really, really okay. You get an A, and there's so many of us who got A's and very good.
You got
grades.
an A? In
No, I didn't get an A, but I did very, very well.
Okay. All right. So we take a break, and then we come back with Jim India and his experience with KCPE.
Unajua shida yako kijana wako nini? Alelewa na mama mang'aa. Mama ana akili. Lazima ningempa kichapo kama cha mwalimu kwa mwanafunzi wake. Ndio aje kutumia kichwa chake ndogo, mwanaume ovyo.
Alex, nataka hii nyumba iwe nyumba yako ya pekee.
Nani yule ambaye unamdate?
Simdate. I have a crush.
Unataka tuhame hapa, tukodishe hapa ili tuende tukae kijijini. Hizo pesa utumie kumfadayana.
Tumekuwa shirika la msaada
Sasa utafanya vipi?
Ngoja nikuulize, kati ya wewe na yeye nani mwenye haja na hizo pesa? Mbona alipokuja hakutuelezea kwa amefika? Hebu chunga usiwe na mkono wa msaada haraka. Hebu pima maji na unga wewe.
Some people in one way or another have been wounded by the church.
And this Sunday we get an opportunity to host Jimara Gwanso, guardian angel alongside a man of God, and we want to understand how best can we heal from this wound.
Music kama kawaida, yours truly, Son of Nations. So save the date and catch the show this Sunday from 11:30 to 1 p.m. only on NTV.
And this is Crossover.
Discover a future of inclusivity at the inaugural Pensions and Conference 2023, KICC Nairobi, November 28th to 29th, 2023. Theme is Enhancing Social Protection and Inclusive Growth. Engage in exclusive exhibitions, personalized sessions, and extensive brand exposure, fostering meaningful connections. To secure your place, contact William at 0728 550 319. Be part of transforming our future into one that embraces social security and inclusivity, shaping a society where everyone thrives. Protect future yako.
The Daily Nation also carried a story about the death of the first Kenyan man to marry a white woman. And this happened during a time when interracial marriages were illegal in Kenya. And John Kimuyu, being a blind man, I think the authorities had no way to prove that he was seeing a white woman. You exposed the Nyayo torture chambers. And that's, it's a very sad story. People laugh about your story, pliers. But give us a typical day at the Nyayo torture chambers.
The idea was borrowed from Ceausescu.
Umesema Koigi wa Mwere ni dangamanya. Hata umufinye na pliers, he will not tell you anything.
Bring 10 Jerry's.
He will not say anything.
Koigi wa Mwere will tell you what he wants to tell you.
And people come in and they're like, oh, it works. I can have ice cream and I'm not in any discomfort. I recommend Sensodyne because it works. It's brilliant.
The Sport Essence is a light serum, quickly absorbed to clear dark marks. Rich moisturizing cream is a gel cream type that deeply hydrates and prevents dark marks. I highly recommend Melano CC for healthy and happy skin. Ruto.
All right, before I invite Jim India to share his experience with KCPE, I do not want to leave out the Business Daily. State mute on 2.75% NHIF rate as new fund kicks in. Government names team to run Social Health Authority. New Act does not disclose amount Kenyans will pay. This report is by Patrick Alushula. The state has kept employees and employers guessing on how much they will pay to fund Kenya's most ambitious social healthcare program, days after appointing the board that will implement the plan. This follows the delays in publishing the regulations that will reveal if the state will honor its promise to cap contributions at 5,000 shillings in monthly deductions or stick with a 2.75% rate that will mean the most paid will contribute more to the fund. The draft regulations will contain the proposed changes that will undergo public participation before the shift from the current deductions of 150 shillings to 1,700 for salaried workers and 500 for self-employed can be effected. All right, trust the Business Daily. This just speaks of Julian Zamboko. KCPE candidates with 400 marks drop 10%. Number of people scoring 400 marks and above drops for 3 consecutive years. Again, the images of the top performers on the front page of the Business Daily as well. All right, and on that note, good morning, Jamindia again. Other than RIP, KCPE, what was your experience?
So I think I didn't test very well. I was those kids who didn't test well. So it was not a great experience for me. And then I think all my texts there was a failure, a glitch in the system. So I wasn't receiving my marks. My mother wasn't receiving my marks. Now they were starting to suspect if I even sat the exams. You know, like it was traumatic. It was traumatic because the whole day everyone around me has their marks except for me. I think eventually my father did get the marks at some point, and yeah, it was okay, cool. You know, nothing. We are not celebrating. We are not carrying twigs around. We are not carrying you on our shoulders. But you've done the exams. That's how you to what will you do? You're our son now. But you know, I also did KCPE with a lot of trauma. So I did my KCPE in 2007, and you guys remember that's the year where we had post-election violence. So anyone who did exams in that year would remember the trauma with which kids had to go through the education system. But to make matters worse, I was in the heart of the violence in Mathare. So right in the heart of it, you know, going to school and find decapitated bodies and things like that. So that is the context within which some of us were doing our KCPE. And again, we are also those children who are sponsored and supported, and the church raised, and you know, the community raised, and just to get you through the system. But here we are today, regardless, right? And I think that is the story of many children in Kenya, majority. Well, not really. Yeah. Mine, I am the exception to the rule. My story is not how many stories go. It's not many children who go through such traumatic experiences, get to sit exams through violence, you know, whether it's violence that is systemic, whether it's violence at the family level, or it's violence in the school system, and then you get to be supported through education by well-wishers and everybody, and end up making it in life, whatever that means. Many of them do not even end up past the Form 4 level. The dropout rates are quite high for most of them because it's easy you want to take the easy route out. So many people like myself and kids like myself end up dropping out of the system to find the easiest thing to do. If you find yourself in the context of a slum, if you find yourself in the context of a rural county, that's what ends up happening to you. So when Asconi was saying that we need to reward merit, merit presupposes equality. Merit assumes that there's a level playing field for all children sitting KCPE or KCSE. They have the same opportunities, they have the same facilities they have, and therefore we are rewarding those who are able to take advantage of the systems and to do exceptionally well. But in a situation where we have deeply entrenched inequality, in a situation where we have deep-seated instituted and even well-intentioned, and you know, somebody asked why we are just putting the mountain in Nairobi. Deep-seated and well-maintained inequality in society, and you can see by how many schools are in these regions compared to other regions. We can compare with how many national schools are in these regions compared to other regions. We can compare with how much of the education funds goes to these regions except to the other. We can compare with how many presidents these regions have had compared to. There are all these comparisons that we can make to show you how our education system has taken cue from our political system. And so, for me, we cannot talk about merit when it comes to the education system. Even the CBC as it comes on the platform of inequality. It assumes that every parent can photocopy, you know, whatever homework kids were given, that they have access to electricity and they have access to, it assumes all those things, which are not true. So for me, that's the situation with the education system, and until we fix that, we are actually setting up a lot of kids for failure. Setting up a lot of kids for failure, and the few who actually make it, some of us, you end up again in the system of inequality and you have no choice. What happens today when you become the Minister for Education and you find that there's all these systems that have been set up the way they are set up? So anyway, cut long story short, I didn't test well, but here we are today, and so hopefully those kids who didn't test well can get a bit of inspiration from this.
But that was it. You guys are you riveted as I was. That was amazing. Thanks for that, and for sharing your experience with us this morning. Honestly, I am feeling a little lost. I'm so used to finding siasa stories on the front page. So I'm like, Allah, where is the politics? The only thing I've spied is siasa, the pullout. They're, I guess, focused on, I see here, Anjeri, 17 billion shilling oil scandal that never was. Ruto to have last word on talks. Parliament President to use parliamentary majority to bulldoze his way to Azimio's disadvantage. Let me just pull it up on the screen here. Let me see. Can you guys see what page it is?
I don't know what paper you're reading.
I just scroll until. I always love the editorial cartoons. Let's see. Oh, they're referencing the delay. You know, you're talking about the glitch in the SMS yesterday.
Oh yeah.
I mean, in your experience yesterday, some experienced the same. Let me see. Siasa pull out.
That's good. What? This guy's coming back together. I thought he did. I thought he was banned.
This Kenya is just a funny place to be.
Let me just make note of this now that we are here. Budget review pushes up total expenditure to above 3.8 trillion shillings. Development spending has been reduced as recurrent goes up by more than 57 billion shillings. Martin Mwita tells us the projected spending for the 2023-2024 financial year now stands at 3.8 trillion shillings from 3.7 trillion shillings, with the government expected to borrow more to bridge the deficit. This comes amid a reduction in the development budget in favor of recurrent spending, which has gone up. The supplementary budget 1 of 2023-2024, assented to by President William Ruto on Thursday, has pushed up spending in the current financial year ending June 30, 2024 by 91.9 billion shillings. This has seen the country's total expenditure and net lending rise from 23% of GDP, meaning the government will have to push for more revenues and debt to meet its spending plan. In the latest move, the government plans to draw an additional 33.7 billion shillings from the consolidated fund, which holds cash derived from domestic and external resources. Recurrent expenditure has gone up by 57.318 billion shillings, with a reduction in the development expenditure of 23 billion shillings. The bill has also given authority for expenditure of appropriations in aid amounting to 58.206 billion. Appropriations in aid are receipts that are used to offset the cost of government services, primarily consisting two main sources: donor grants or loans, and revenue collected directly by agencies through service fees and charges. With these, the fiscal deficit has increased from 4.4% to 5.4%. of GDP amid high debt obligations on dollar-denominated loans. Quote, the expansion in the fiscal deficit has not been occasioned by ministerial expenditure, but by public debt service in view of the depreciating Kenya shilling against the US dollar and other major currencies. An official statement by the National Assembly noted. Disregard, the consolidated fund service expenditure has increased by 145.49 billion, mostly due to increased foreign interest payments. Among the immediate headache is funding the country's debut Eurobond, which is due in June next year. Kenya is expected to pay more than 305 billion shillings, with the continued weakening of the shilling, meaning higher amounts. This has significantly reduced the fiscal space for discretionary development and recurrent expenditure. While the country's debt currently stands at 10.25 trillion, the government plans to borrow more to meet its spending plans. Let us see. So, well, what were we looking for again? Siasa pages. Geez, am I almost there? I feel like I should be there already. Okay, as I look, because I know it'll, there's the story I've seen around the national dialogue. So Kalonzo Musyoka tweeted and said we should have the report by Saturday. Okay, what is going on? Is it attached at the very end, or did I skip it all together? Let us see.
You just skip what?
The Siasa pages on my touch screen here. Ah, finally. She lands on it. Here we go. Ruto to have last word on talks. President to use parliamentary majority to bulldoze his way to Azimio's disadvantage. An image here, Kalonzo Musyoka, Kimani Ichung'wah, Opiyo Wandayi, Aaron Cheruiyot and the other members of the team. This one has been penned by Luke Witch, who says after 3 months of negotiation between President William Ruto and Azimio leader Raila Odinga, the government side could be having the last laugh as the report heads to the bicameral house. The committee, co-chaired by National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah and former Vice President Kalonzo, will Friday adopt the report ahead of release on Saturday. The committee will be finalizing its work a day before its November 26th deadline. Here is a quote. We are now towards the tail end, agreeing on all the nitty-gritty of what will constitute our report, which we do hope we shall be here with the technical and secretariat team up to Saturday. We can announce to the country that we shall be able to have a report adopted and released to the country on Saturday, a day ahead of our deadline of on November 26th, which is Sunday. If you give us time, we will be able to release our report on Saturday, Kalonzo said. Now, prior to this statement, right, there were lines in the sand which were drawn. We had Aaron Cheruiyot, for one, saying housing levy is going nowhere. It has created jobs in Kericho and Bomet. I think he was speaking in Bomet, so he referenced, so he talked about 160,000 jobs. So why would we accept to have the housing levy removed and then, or suspended, whatever the case may be? Then Kalonzo Musyoka saying if cost of living is not addressed, forget it. In fact, his party said, if need be, tunarudi wapi? Maandamano. So now that they're telling us they will have a report ready for us on Saturday, what do you make of the statements just before and where we are now? Patricia?
I think it sounds a little disingenuous, to be honest, because you've been sitting with this team for months. You've had so many sessions. We knew from the beginning cost of living is something that, I mean, there's no off button. They knew the financial situation of the nation. They understand the debt burden. So for you to, at the end of all these months, after you've had the CS for Treasury, sit there, explain, break it down, different institutions and organizations come and give their views. I mean, it was looking like a very positive experience from the beginning. Just to come to the tail end, now when you're supposed to produce your report, and say, actually, let's go back. There's some things we don't want to finish yet. You know, it's almost like they're saying we don't want this process to conclude. We want to keep bickering. We want to keep fighting, because it really doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense at all for you. And in fact, here it says how the opposition leader, he still wants the forensic audit of the 2022 presidential poll done before this report is, before this whole commission is, the dialogue committee is finalized. So I don't understand how we're bringing up these issues from way back when. This went all the way into the Supreme Court. The decision was made. Last year, he said he will accept the results. Remember how many times he was asked that question? Will you accept these results? And he said, when the results are out, I will accept them. So here we are back again. And it looks disingenuous, to be honest, on the side of the opposition. And it looks like there are cracks, because we see Jubilee trying to, distance themselves a little bit from Azimio now, because they're like, where are we heading? There's no direction here. We can't go back to the streets. Kenyans don't want to go back to the streets. And you cannot be the team that's constantly, brewing discord, telling young people, let's go back to this. That's not the role of the opposition. That cannot be the tail end of what you guys were put in office to do. These are elected officials who are still in the opposition. And so it really makes no sense for your only strategy as the opposition to just constantly tell people to go to the streets. I mean, it's a mess. It's a mess. They need to conclude. There comes a time in life when you just say, okay, we did our best, we didn't succeed. Let's try again in 5 years. That's what I think they should do.
All right, Nurdin, Hagai, are we fine? If nothing else, at least we get an IEBC.
And it's actually good you mentioned that, because there is a constituency that doesn't have a member of parliament to date. There are areas which don't have MCAs to date. And you see their rights to representation is stifled. So we have to work on IEBC. The problem is that as the law is amended, they feel like the president will have an upper hand. And that's why they were in the streets as well, and they wanted to tackle IEBC. But you see, for me, every time I come here, I ask myself, what was the main reason for these talks? And I keep telling you, if at all the main agenda was cost of living, that's the easiest thing to tackle. Listen, they'll be done by a week. Because if that would only mean you just make sure you make people-centric laws. Now, there's something that was captured in your daily, where they talk about how the president is going to have an upper hand. That's where you're going. You see, the upper hand is in parliament. If, for example, they're talking about reduction of taxes, well, you have to go to parliament to amend. You get? So parliament is very vital in all this, in the laws that are passed. So if, for example, they say they want some taxes removed or reduced, so it means after this report is finished, and that is captured in the report, and Kenya Kwanza agreed to that, that means parliament has to have a role to play. Now my question is, if the president, with the majority that he has, if he doesn't feel like he wants to do certain, reduce certain taxes, how will you force him at the end of the day with his majority? And that's a sad reality, because I feel like our parliament is captured, and I keep saying this every other time. And that's why for me, these talks, I keep calling them BBI too. And the cost of living there was just an incentive, just like BBI had incentives for the youth and what have you. Because the main purpose of this thing has been captured. That is the leader of official position in the constitution, enshrining CDF in the constitution, having the prime cabinet secretary in the constitution. What personal interests have been achieved. Now, issues of IEBC are yet to be achieved, because you see, the main problem with IEBC is because everybody is angling for 2027. So they want a scenario where they feel like they can also have a role to play in whatever commissioner comes into play, so that we feel like we can have a say, or actually try to have a fair chance, because they feel like with how things are right now, the president will have an upper hand. So at the end of the day, I believe whether they decide to go back to the streets or not, when this talk started, I told you, two things will happen. The memorandum the president sent to the speakers of National Assembly earlier in the year about issues of amendment of the constitution, talking about CDF, talking about prime cabinet secretary and leader of opposition, these have been achieved. So he has achieved whatever he wanted to achieve. Now, the other side, you get the short end of the stick, because Kenya Kwanza is on record saying that we'll never allow discussion on an audit or forensic audit of the results. They say that the results are out there. Go watch, go check the results, you have them there. So if at all that plus cost of living, which they say they will not tackle cost of living. Cost of living is being handled by the government. So if those two things you had in your agenda haven't been sorted out, so what is the point of the agenda? You get me? So at the end of the day, I believe we wait for the report. I don't want to be a pessimist. Wait for the report. But I do feel, after the instances we were told that the president and the former prime minister had met a couple of times, it means the big boys had agreed on something. So whatever hasn't been agreed upon, we wait to see how they will tackle it. Because cost of living is just not kulima. Because people tell you, cost of living, unga imeshuka. Be serious. We have to be serious in this country. Because at the end of the day, electricity is cost of living. The fuel is cost of living. Because you cannot just tell people, okay, so we subsidize production. So what about the fact that those things that you have to be in the market? They have been transported. So at the end of the day, I believe we need to have a holistic discussion, and leaders have to be honest. Because if they achieve their interests, and then they get ahead and they realize, oh, maybe we got the short end of the stick. Now you can't go back and start telling the people, you know what, by the way, he deal Jaiva, let's go back and cause chaos, and then we're called again to be managed. Because they have been managed for 3 months, courtesy of these talks. This was a management strategy, and they have been managed. So at the end of the day, I believe the report we see on Saturday will be more or less for the big boys. The cost of living issue which the people are crying about will not be achieved by Saturday.
Okay.
Unless they have come up with recommendations that the government is ready and willing to take up. That is issue of reduction of taxes, which we know this government will never agree to such things because of how they have handled their agenda on taxes.
All right. Ascon Kamili, Nudin says addressing the cost of living is as easy as formulating or people-centric laws. But he also says leaders need to be truthful. This administration says it is being truthful when it tells us, my friend, tuko na deni, the interest rates on loans, external loans, very high. So where do we generate money to run government? Internally. Ascon Kamili.
Thank you very much. I think it's a very important discussion that we are having, considering the fact that what is going on at the National Dialogue Committee will affect each and every one of us in every sense. I mean, whatever decision they'll make will have a big impact on our lives. So, at the very outset, let me say that we've all known, and I think I was watching your interview yesterday, you raised it, that cost of living has not been given the attention it deserves, or at least what the committee was talking about from when they started meeting up to now. The conversation has been more about how the politicians can get their space in governance and in the affairs of the country, and not much weight has been attached to the cost of living discussion. Nordin says it's as easy as coming up with laws that are people-centric. In my view, Kenya does not lack in laws. Kenya does not lack in policies. Kenya has almost everything. The most difficult thing is how politicians handle the affairs of Kenyans. You realize that the politicians will always want to attach their interests to what seems to be the trouble Kenyans are going through, so that then they get public support and approval, and then they'll be able to advance their interests through that, ride on that. And that appears to be the politics globally, and is not very new to Kenya, but it's a very unfortunate thing. Secondly, the cost of living question is a global thing. I don't think it's something that is very unique to Kenya. You go to South Africa, people are complaining about one thing or another. You go to Ghana, you go to almost all countries in Africa, and even globally out there, people are complaining of one thing or the other. So I don't think it's about the cost of living as such, but it's about how our country handles the question of the cost of living. What is important to what? Is it the question of how you're going to bring food to the table? Is it how electricity comes down? Is it how the cost of fuel is being, the modality within which we are going to bring these things down? That is more important. And when I apply my mind to what the government is doing, number one, the government has been very truthful in most cases. When they talk about the debt situation, these are things that are out there. We can go and research and get the facts of the situation we find ourselves. Are we in a bad space with our lenders? Are we in a situation where, should we default, the consequences will be very dire? These are things that are out there. We can research and call out the government should they be giving us false information. On the question of the cost of living, this is something everybody knows in terms of food production. The president has been talking about it severally in rallies and even in their boardroom setting, where he's been talking about his idea of how to bring down the cost of food in this country. And my understanding is every election comes with a leader and their manifesto. This leader should be able to be given a chance to implement their manifesto in the fashion they're doing it. Whether good or bad, my understanding of politics should be a leader is elected against their promises. They are re-elected when they achieve or when they implement what they had promised. Should they fail to, the people get a chance to get another leader. That is what happens all over. Right now, Biden is in a very tight spot. Trump just came back the other day, is asking to be elected back into office. The people there are going to determine whether they are electing Trump based on the performance of Biden. Now in Kenya, unfortunately, we don't even allow the president to do what he wants to do. You know, he wants to implement housing levy. We are here demanding that he drops it. This was a very key thing and a pillar in his manifesto. How then are we going to evaluate him after 5 years? It's important that we allow our leaders, be it at the most basic level as the civic seats, MCA, allow them to implement what they had promised. When they fail, then now we can ask them out and bring in somebody else who has a better way of doing things. But also besides that, I've had the president talk about two things that I think are very important, and he's very intentional about it. People are complaining about the president traveling all over, you know, looking for whatever, something they don't understand. He's in Germany, he's in Saudi Arabia, he's all over the place. But I think the president is discussing two things. We have a question with strengthening the shilling. How do you do this? Export and import, you know, trade. And then the last thing is how we are going to get diaspora income, which is what the president is encouraging us. But here we are calling him, I mean, stop this, you don't have to travel, you don't have to do this. This is his way of doing things. Let's allow him to see, I mean, to do this, and let's see what happens in the end. If he fails, we'll have a chance to elect Raila Odinga or elect Kalonzo Musyoka.
Okay, I'm listening to you. I can get what you're saying, right? Allow the president to implement his manifesto. He was elected against his promises.
And actually, I'm impressed that it's only Ruto, for a very long time, who seems to be very keen on his manifesto. It's very interesting, and I think Kenyans should be able to look at that very keenly.
But my question is, when the stomach grumbles, it grumbles loudly. So if for somebody who is going hungry, you telling them, allow the president to implement his manifesto, they may not be as convinced. But Jim, India, on this, on the dialogue, should Kenyans, in your view, expect much reprieve where cost of living is concerned? Because that was the banner under which Kenyans were called to take to the streets.
So anyway, just to start off by addressing that, you know, accountability is a never-ending process. Accountability doesn't stop after elections. In fact, in a proper democracy, immediately after elections, then the real work begins for each and every citizen. And that work is, if you did not vote for that government, it is to keep it in check. If you voted for this government, then even the expectation is even higher on you as the voter to ensure that you're keeping them accountable to the reasons why you voted for them, which is their manifesto. And that means asking the tough questions day in, day out. Politicians left to their own devices have proved time and again that they will screw you up. They have proved it. If left to their own devices, if left to do what they want to do. They do not do things out of the goodness of their hearts. They seem to be more preoccupied with their own selfish interests. And so the citizens who voted for them, and this is specific to the citizens who voted for them, you have a higher calling to keep this government accountable. To those who did not vote for them, you have even more reason to hold them accountable for and the reason is you did not vote for them, you do not believe in them, but you live in this country anyway. You're not going anywhere. We don't have another country. This is the one we have. So you have to do that difficult job, okay? When you elect a president, you don't give him a blank check. Nzae, jibambe. That's not what elections are. When you elect a president, you're saying, we are donating part of our power to you. We are not giving you absolute reign and absolute power. We are just donating part of it to you. Just remember, we're still in charge. So we need to act like we're still in charge. And that means, if that means asking him why he's global trotting, we have to do it. And it's true, there are great benefits to him going around the world. But we just have to ask him, in what manner, in what sustainable manner are you doing it? Can you reduce your delegation? Can you reduce the frequency? Can you reduce the private chat? You know, those are questions that are not bad. It's just saying, we can do this in a better way. If we are asking him, you know, this housing business, you're taking too much from us. We're already paying 30%. You're taking more. Can we reduce it, or can we delay it? That is conversation. That is what a democracy is. We must converse. So anyone who is afraid of conversation is afraid of accountability. And anyone who is afraid of accountability, who is saying, oh, msiniulize maswali, that one is a person who we should be wary about. So I am glad that the president actually allows us to ask all these questions, because then it means he's a bit open-minded to us discussing. But democracy, I think, is a long-term project. Sometimes we think that democracy happens, you know, we thought that when we promulgated the constitution, then you were done with this democracy project. All our problems were sorted once and for all. But the reality is, there is this long-term project. Sometimes it's one step forward, 2 steps backward, 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards. And for me, that is the place for things like the BBI that we had, the national dialogue. They are bringing us to a place where we are pressure testing our democracy. We are testing what is working and what is not working. And what is working, we maintain or we improve. What is not working, we can certainly change. And part of what is not working is we have a deeply flawed electoral system. From 2013 with the chicken, actually all the way back, you know, you can, but post 2010, the chicken gate scandal, where you had these private companies that were receiving kickbacks. Again, you know, you have a whole situation of state capture there, where the key institution that is mandated with delivering a democracy has already been captured by private interests who are delivering products but receiving kickbacks. And these guys were prosecuted in the UK. Of course, in Kenya, those fellas are still writing books and, you know, chatting away every now and again, never prosecuted for any matter. 2017, we have all questions. Oh, people are sleeping in France. You know, Maraga then says, well, if they're sleeping in France, then maybe we can wake up tomorrow and do elections again. And so we end up going to do another election, which half the country boycotts. That is a sign of a deeply flawed electoral system. All right. In 2022, you again have the same questions of, you know, you have this vipindire of some funny characters in the system, you know, people putting for us carpet and all this drama and nonsense they're doing at KCPE. You have others who are saying they were prayed into positions. Crazy scenes. And then suddenly you have a president after the judges decide. Because we have a deeply flawed electoral system, the people who have often voted the right way, which means they've ended up with a president who won elections, feel like we have a perfect system. And they do this thing where they bury their head in the sand against anything else that is raised. The fact that you got, the person you voted for got into office does not equate to the system being flawless. It simply means if the system is rigged, it was rigged in your favor. And one day it can be rigged against you. And so you must be, as a concerned citizen, our priority is that we need a flawless system, a system that actually delivers credible, verifiable results. I do not think that NADCO, I have followed the conversations, I do not think that they have addressed themselves to this. Same thing we accused Raila Odinga of after the handshake. He did not address himself to these issues. Maybe they are also beneficiaries of this flawed system in one way or another. And so I do not expect, I have always maintained, I do not expect anything progressive. I do not expect anything new. I do not expect anything that brings in any fresh air or hygiene to a democracy from NADCO. It will be the whole, you know, hot air stories of, you know, let's change this, let's reconstitute the IBC, because at the heart of it, we saw the Cherera 4. These 4 guys were brought in by Uhuru Kenyatta at the very last minute. And we saw how that was a calculated political move. And right now, everyone is saying, maybe we can reenact again what happened in 2022. If we can reconstitute the IEBC in the way that we want, we can put in their numbers and people who we can deal with. And I think it's pushing us closer to the conversation we'll have on state capture and how that works. So I do not expect anything. I think the cost of living, obviously they do not talk about, they do not even address themselves to the real issues. Why are things really, really expensive in Kenya? What do we do about the dollar? What do we do about oil prices and electricity prices? They only talked about 16, that, you know, we need to reduce from 16 to 8. That's the main thing that they are focused on. But even before the finance bill, the cost of living was high and VAT was at 8%. So that's not a magic wand that we can strike around. There are other issues that they did not address themselves to. So I think they were kept busy. They have maybe earned allowances, although they say they have not, but
right.
Well, okay. Just a follow-up to what,
so allow me to pay bills.
No, I think I've
state of the economy. 10 seconds.
You know,
if you can.
Jim talked about having a conversation and accountability measures for the president, and I agree with that. The president has actually talked about the office of the official opposition leader, everybody being allowed to talk about it. But what we are doing with NADCO is to demand that the president either does what we want in the opposition, or we go to the streets and people die. It is not how to run a democracy. A democracy is run by demanding the president, please cut down on your cost. He listens to that, and you can see, measures are taken.
Okay.
But we can't be blackmailing the president into submission all the time. That is not right.
Nitakukumbusha penye umefikia. Break. We come back on the other side.
On my dark marks, I've tried everything from A to Z, even vitamin C, but hardly any results. Nivea Lumina 630 works from day one, with visible results in just 2 weeks and 71% dark marks reduction in 12. Join the 1 million women already using the #1 Lumina 630 from Nivea.
When you're finally released from pain. That moment when you start to get back to ordinary, and ordinary feels amazing. Whatever pain you're going through, release starts here.
Hii Krisi GoTV Stream iko mkononi, mechi yako na sports action yote, na watoije hata wao hawajawachwa nyuma. Wacha enjoyment izidi hii holiday na GoTV. GoTV Stream available from 1st December for all active customers.
At Stanbic Kenya, we believe in your financial potential, and we are here to help you reach new heights. Enjoy an attractive interest rate of up to 14% per annum on your savings. Make the most of this exclusive offer today and let your money thrive. For more details, call us today or visit a branch near you. Stanbic Bank.
It is time to celebrate at the only university offering mining, environmental engineering and resource management among many other programs. Join Taita Taveta University as it holds its 6th graduation ceremony. This event will be aired live on NTV this Friday, 24th November 2023 from 10 a.m. It will be presided over by the University Chancellor, Dr. Sally Kosgei. Taita Taveta University, home of ideas.
The Sport Essence is a light serum, quickly absorbed to clear dark marks. Rich moisturizing cream is a gel cream type that deeply hydrates and prevents dark marks. I highly recommend Melano CC for healthy and happy skin.
Ruto.
All right, welcome back to AM Live. With me in studio, we have Askan Kamili, youth policy analyst, Jim India, political analyst. We have Rudine Hagai, who is an advocate of the High Court and certified professional mediator. We also have Patricia Njira, who is a lawyer, as well as a public policy proponent. When Jim was making, when Jim was making his submissions, and then he said, politicians left to their own devices will, and then I saw he said screw you, and then Nudine's yes packed up, and then he added up will screw you up. But we're getting Ascon, I cut you short. Did you have?
I was just highlighting something very important, that there is a very fine line between holding continue killing people in the streets, as has been happening all over Africa. They'll want to have a discussion with you and you get your interest taken care of. That is not opposition. Should be pointing out what you think should be done differently and putting pressure through the institutions that have been established by the constitution. There is parliament, there is the judiciary, there is, I mean, they are all
You're leading us closer to that thing about state capture.
Which is there are avenues through which we can advance these discussions, and that is what I wanted to point out. We can have a discussion about the state of the nation. We can have a discussion about the things the government is doing, the travels, you know, the mode through which they want to bring the cost of living down. But we cannot use that to call for a discussion on a table and demand that either you bring the cost of living down through giving us this, or we go back to the streets and people die. That is not opposition.
Rudy?
You know, when you talk about accountability, something came to my mind. You see, issue of accountability, it's not a favor the government is offering us. We have a constitution, access to information, granted in the constitution. And so when you talk about accountability, for me, this is what I'll say. When they speak, they say they want to be accountable, they want to be asked questions. But in all honesty, this is a government that doesn't want to be accountable. I'll give you an example. Yesterday, the president is on record saying how they're about to privatize some parastatals. I had a problem the day an amendment was made in Parliament to remove the approval from Parliament. They're talking about bureaucracy. The issue about approvals is more or less about our say as the people. Now, we've been here before, and that is why that law was put in place, where parastatals were sold to cronies, to those closer to the proximity to power. And you see, we don't have a situation where we hand out parastatals like confetti. Just, oh, mekuja shika. There's a video doing round right now which illustrates how they can be handed over. You see, there's a video on TikTok how someone is saying, you want some chapati in it. Like, you're just going to hand it over. And without approval from Parliament. That, for me, is bad. Number two.
But did Parliament have a say to begin with?
Yes, it did. Ordinarily, before the law was changed, ordinarily, approval was from Parliament. And that is the bureaucracy he's talking about. So we've amended the law, the same Parliament has amended the law to allow the executive to sell parastatals or to privatize parastatals. So you have to realize that these parastatals, most of them have land, have properties. So the question is, who's going to be accountable when we get to understand that politicians end up being in control of these parastatals? Who are we going to ask? That's the question we ask. Number two, we keep talking about the travels. Or by the before, you know, right now he's in EAC. Before he comes back for the one-day state visit, before he leaves again, the thing is, when you talk about his traveling, he's using taxpayers' money. So it has to be asked. So if you hear him sometimes say, watu wananisumbua na maswali mingi, it's not kusumbuliwa, say maswali mingi. We just want to understand, what do we gain from that? It's as simple as, I've gone here A, B, C, D. He went to China. Until today, we don't know what he agreed. Until today. So you have a scenario where the travels, yes, like Jim rightfully said, of course they can open us up economic-wise and Italy. But at the end of the day, we do have questions. In EAC, before I finish, there is the issue of the oil issue. I hope when he's still there, he'll resolve that issue. Because yesterday I read the dailies, and KPC is saying that Tanzania and Uganda are constructing the central corridor. If that is finished, and courtesy of competitive rates, we are going to lose a lot of money. So how does he plan to move around the issues that we're going to lose money? So at the end of the day, I believe we do have issues, teething issues as they may call them, but matters accountability are a must. It's not a favor. It's something that you're using taxpayers' money. So we have to ask you questions. And I believe this is more or less a government of acrobats. Because today they say this, tomorrow they say that, and what they say is not what they mean, and what they mean is not what they say. So you ask yourself, what do you really want at the end of the day? I sat here with you 2 weeks ago before you went on leave, and I asked you, Olive, there was 10 billion shillings disbursed for El Nino, Olive. And we laughed about it. Little did we know, the deputy president came out this week saying how money was disbursed to governors. Before he finished, the council, before that was after the Mombasa governor responded to him.
Abdul Samad.
The council came back and said, yo, you have not disbursed any money. Then he comes back and says, oh, if you're waiting for money, it's never coming. But the government will release some 2-point-something billion. So the question is, you know, when money is disbursed, and I remember I asked you that, once it's out, where does it go to? That's accountability. We need to understand. But whenever we ask questions, we're told, oh, Uhuru Kenyatta, you know, we're about to tell you about 2 billion shillings that was taken. No. Those diversion taxes are not what we want. And at the end of the day, they keep forgetting. Uhuru Kenyatta is them, and they are Uhuru Kenyatta. Because this is just Jubilee B that has foundation ya yellow too. Mpaka foundation too.
Okay.
Make up your at the end of the day, but it's Jubilee. So at the end of the day, the ills that we suffered under Jubilee are part and parcel of them, because high-ranking officials in this government were high-ranking officials in that government. In as much as they tell us they were sidelined, they were still earning a salary and had offices. So at the end of the day, I believe the government needs to be honest, because you can't speak on both ends of the mouth and you think you can take us for idiots. Because at the end of the day, even if, as Sean Paul says, you want to stick to your lies like glue, one day the lies will catch up with you. So I believe we're at a point where accountability is a must, not a favor. And when you ask questions, let them not feel so pressed so as to go on a short and long call at the same time.
You know, several things. 3 observing there. Jim is nodding. Jim is like.
And I'm busy saying, wait, that conversation is tilting in only one direction. And so I don't know if you'll allow us to just...
Okay, just let me make just 3 observations, and then now we get into the state capture, because he referenced Uhuru Kenyatta, so tuko hapo sasa.
Yes.
But when you were talking about his amenda yo EAC, what is it? An EAC... is that a summit?
Yes, a summit or something.
Okay, I'll need to check that. But you reminded me of this. Do you remember this when the king visited? And then the memes, and then so this is the president. On a light note, ni bahati ungechelewa kidogo tu hivi. Ungenipata, nilikuwa natoka. Anyway, unaenda tuendanishe. But the other observation, when this is about privatization, I thought the whole idea must have been to remove the bureaucracy in terms of the process of privatizing these institutions, and then also who's to say if it goes through parliament it'll be above board. We hear stories, we've had the majority whip himself tell you what the state of affairs is there.
Some people want their cut.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Yeah, so I mean, there's nothing to guarantee that that process would be above board. I can't remember what my observation was. It'll come back to me. But yes, you had something to add before we get into state capture?
Yes, it was actually just an observation in line with what you were saying. And because he was talking about the trips, and there's been a lot of hate, you know, about the president and the traveling. And I mean, first they reduced the number of people who will travel in the other offices in the executive. So I think let's give him that, right? They put measures in place to reduce spending in that number of staff a CS can travel with, how long. So it's a small step, but it is a step which we should recognize. And so is it this week or last week, we saw the World Bank offer this 12 billion USD concession loan with a very low interest, which is something that African nations have been building towards. They've been wanting, yes, we want access to these loans, but we want them at the same interest rate as other developed nations. Africa has traditionally been paying higher interest rates. And so that's also another plus. That's also another positive that's coming from the travel, the foreign direct investment that is trying to come back into the country. And so he's not doing it to, I don't know, upset Kenyans. I think Kenyans have a way, they're looking at it like, oh, how, again, where are you going? Come back, stay here. Come back, stay here and do what? The issues are many, the solutions are out there. He needs to be schmoozing, he needs to be mingling with all these other heads of institutions and around different nations. And so I think let's give credit where it's due in terms of there will be progress. We can't see it right now, and progress is messy. Progress is messy, it's never linear. We never get to a place where we say, okay, we are going to start here and we will finally end up here in one straight line. It doesn't end up like that. And so there's this philosopher, just indulge me, Olive. There's this philosopher called Friedrich Hegel, and he talks about progress, how messy it is. And he gives this analysis about how we always start at one extreme. We start at, right now, Kenya is at the extreme of, we're too lax. We're too lax in terms of fighting corruption and accountability, right? But now he says in his, what he proposes in his theory, we need to move from there, this extreme of being too lax, to being the other extreme of cracking down on everything. Then somewhere along the way, we find our middle ground and the equilibrium. And that's how progress is. It's never linear, so there will be a lot of ups, there will be a lot of downs. And so I always say, let's try to find the silver lining where we can, because we need to survive. We need to survive these next few years. And we can't survive with just gloom and doom daily, right? We can't. And so,
surviving is relative, right?
All right. So I've confirmed it is the EAC High Level Forum on Climate Change